All right, let's keep rolling. We're going to stay in the basketball realm because, like I said, it is surprising knowing Adam Silver is one of the better commissioners in professional sports that they don't do a ton of crossover. We're going to talk about Luka Dončić. He had wow, words. He had 50-point showings in 5 games this past week, including a 60-point, 21 rebound, 10 assists outing against the Knicks. How many people actually knew about this? That's the first and foremost unfortunate part.
I feel like that was a pretty big deal the other day, but
Yeah, I feel like people did make a big deal of it. Maybe I was just lost in the sauce of college bowl season in the Mayo. Is it wrong to infer that the Hawks, the Atlanta Hawks, who of course traded their the third overall pick to the Dallas Mavericks, and they got the 5th overall pick, and they took Trae Young, is it wrong to infer that they lost the trade early in their careers?
Well, Trae Young's a multiple-time All-Star. Trae Young is very much like in that conversation where he could be on a Hall of Fame trajectory. It's not implausible to suggest that. But I think we're talking about a potential top 5 point guard ever in Luka Dončić. And maybe that's a little overzealous of me to say, but for him to
I don't think it's more overzealous than Daniel Jones as a top 10 quarterback. Continue.
For him to will the Mavericks back in that game against the Knicks and to continue to develop in the way that he has under Jason Kidd, which I know Jason Kidd taking that Mavericks job, getting to work with Luka Dončić was a big appeal for him. I don't think it's too soon to say that the Hawks lost this trade.
Yeah, I don't either. No, and I don't think it's out of the realm to say what you said about him being a top 5 point guard ever, because I think in a similar vein to Steph Curry, he's going to be regarded as someone who changed the game and continued to open the pipeline from Europe to the United States and the NBA. And so, yeah, no, and look, here's the facts of the matter. The Mavericks in Luka's rookie season had Dirk Nowitzki still there, which that statue they just built outside of American Airlines Center is awesome, by the way. So great. But they just built in Dallas outside of the arena. It helped not only having Dirk that first year, I think, for Luka, but it also helped that obviously the Mavericks have been relevant. And there were already pieces around Luka when he arrived. You could argue that Trae Young had the more uphill battle. I mean, there's already talk of, will McMillan get canned this offseason? Will Trae Young have to have another new head coach again? And then, Kevin Huerter, the Red Rocket, was a sidekick. He goes out to Sacramento. Who has Trae Young consistently had in his corner in Atlanta throughout the last few seasons? Whereas Luka, yes, obviously Jalen Brunson says goodbye and goes to New York, and Dirk retires, and Boban and company and some other guys are, not always going to be in Dallas forever. But I think that at least in the front office, even with a new head coach and Jason Kidd, I feel like there's just more consistency around Luka Dončić, and that's what's allowing him to succeed. And that is why our expectations for him remain so low.
And you have ownership that's willing to invest in Mark Cuban. But I think
and are very forward-facing, of course, with Mark Cuban.
Like, on any normal day, you'd be like, man, you know what? I'm still taking Trae Young as my point guard any day of the week. He's one of the elite scorers in the NBA. He plays with a lot of spunk. He's a legit blockbuster box office attraction. But I think Luka is, just look at that one stat line that you rattled off, that triple-double there. I think it was that he had the 21 rebounds. Point guards don't get that. That doesn't happen. That's not something that you're used to seeing. So for him to be able to develop that well-rounded approach to the game, it reminds me of Jason Kidd when Jason Kidd used to have all those triple doubles. He was a triple double machine. When you play in that vein and then you take it to that next level, 3 times scoring 50 points in 5 games. That is what a truly elite athlete does.
It's a Kobe, LeBron, 100%, Michael Jordan, 100%. Steph Curry.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's amazing that we continue to see so many generational talents pop up in the NBA. And I think a lot of it's because the nature of the game has changed, where it really is so superstar driven now more than ever. So you start to see more and more and more of these show up. I think it's a matter of us taking the time to appreciate these contributions to the game. And like you said, you're opening doors for the next generation as well. I don't think it's out of the realm of reasonability to suggest that the the Hawks lost this trade. And I do think it's plausible to suggest that Luka is already on the verge of declaring himself to be an all-time great. I don't know if you have anything.
Kobe.
Okay. So what's Luka's signature? What do you do that leads you to shout Luka?
Doesn't he like to eat a ton of food before he plays? Maybe I'll eat some McDonald's. Speaking of people who like to talk, Jim Harbaugh, The Athletic, is reporting that the University of Michigan alum and head coach is NFL bound if he gets an offer to return to the league. The Broncos and the Colts are considered contenders at this time. Michigan lost to TCU in the college football playoff semifinals, in case you missed that Saturday night, with some questionable officiating, though. John, is this an appropriate way for Harbaugh's tenure to end at his alma mater?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Listen. I feel like every year we talk about, is Harbaugh NFL bound? Is Harbaugh? I feel like since the year that he left for Michigan, they were already talking about, is he NFL bound? Did he bring a little bit of prestige back to the Michigan name? He did.
Yes.
There were some bad seasons. That 2020 season was abominable in Ann Arbor.
You went to the playoff the next year, though.
But they come back, they rebound, brought some prestige back, and Michigan.
He beat Ohio State, most noteworthy.
They just beat them, crushed them. And that matters significantly. That was a bad loss to TCU. Not taking anything away from TCU. TCU played the best game in the history of the program against Michigan. But once again, Harbaugh coming up short here. It's amazing. This guy, and this is nothing against Jim Harbaugh personally or professionally even, but this guy has never won the big one across the NFL or college football. But he's getting a lot of opportunities even so.
Did you know he's in the Colts Ring of Honor sidebar? Like, how?
I mean, he was there for a while. He was there with the Colts. And that's why I think if the Colts came to him and were like, hey, we want you as our head coach, I don't think the Colts are a bad fit for Jim Harbaugh because you're not committed long-term to any quarterback of any sort there. So he could build however he wants to in that regard. He has a history with the city as well. If I'm a head coach, I want nothing to do with the Denver Broncos job right now.
Yeah,
I really want nothing to do with that. So yeah, would this be appropriate? Coming up short when it matters and then making the jump? Yeah. I think
very on brand.
I think it is. And again, to all these people, and I see it every single day in my timeline, who say the transfer portal is the worst thing. Players can just go wherever. Look what these coaches do year in and year out in both the NFL and college football, especially college football.
We also know that Jim Irsay loves his former players. He likes making them coaches. I just want to put that on the record.
There's no loyalty whatsoever among college football coaches to programs. Very few outliers there. This is appropriate to me, Mia. What say you?
Yep. I mean, how else is he going to go? By winning a natty with Kirby Smart and Nick Saban still in the game? I don't see that happening anytime soon. I'd rather, bet on pigs to start flying because I just don't see him beating either of those programs.
Look, the reality is we were potentially a few calls away, a few snaps away from getting Ohio State versus Michigan in the national championship game. I mean, we were very close to that.
Which would have been in the same year, I guess, same-ish year of UNC Duke in the Final Four, which would have been incredible for content purposes. But at the same time, Ohio State losing at the buzzer on a missed field goal was also fantastic for content purposes. No, I think that the fact of the matter is for Jim Harbaugh, has he hit his ceiling outside of making a national championship game?
That is a valuable question to ask because when you see these 2 years of success here,
he won 2 Big Ten titles. He beat Ohio State twice.
You've got people wanting to come play for Michigan again. And if you're going to give up on that, there's going to be a lot of what ifs. Well, what if Harbaugh had stayed and he didn't get a chance to prove that this winning culture was being built? I don't know. I mean, it's tough. And if you're a Michigan fan, I feel for you because that's really crappy. But at the same time, that's the nature of the business. That's just how it is. And
it would be funny if he goes from one former home in Michigan to Indianapolis. I think he could spin that, knowing him. He would spin that into I'm going home again in a different way.
I do think that it was deliberate, especially since last year there were talks of him potentially jumping back to the NFL. I do
And
think
going to Minnesota, where apparently he assumed he had the job in the bag.
I think it's deliberate that he came back for another year knowing if I prove that I can lead this Michigan team once again to the playoff, then no team can deny me in the NFL. And it's true. They can't. I mean, let's not take anything away here either. Jim Harbaugh was a really good coach for a period of time with the 49ers.
He went to a Super Bowl.
He brought them, they were knocking on the door in 2011 against the Giants. And then the next year they go to the Super Bowl. So let's not take anything away from him in that sense. Just saying.
Always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
If you want to see all our videos about real news stories that are funny, stupid, or weird, click the subscribe button below. Otherwise, we'll start posting spoilers about your favorite new movies.